This video was brought to you by my patrons. When I watched Spider-Man for the first time, I was just a kid, a 13-year-old kid, and in that moment, I witnessed something amazing, something spectacular, a hero that could save all of us, and that's all I wanted to be, a hero. I wanted to be like Spider-Man. Out of every superhero that has ever existed, this was the one that drew my attention the most. I didn't quite know why, but he was the one I wanted to be. I initially thought it was because I grew up with these films, but it was more than that. It wasn't just a moment in time that I was witnessing, but rather it was what these movies had to say, and how it conveyed Spider-Man's true essence as a character. You see it with all of Sam Raimi's Spider-Man films, but it would take me many years to fully understand this, to understand its true impact on me, to understand why I could never forget these films. And that happened when I saw Into the Spider-Verse, how it told one of the best Spider-Man stories ever made, and how much it was influenced by the Sam Raimi ones. It made me think back. Think to a time where I was just a kid, just a teenager, and it was then that I realized why I loved the character so much. It wasn't because he was a superhero. It wasn't because he could web sling his way through New York. It wasn't because he was different than everyone else. It was something else. Something I could have never thought of as a child. Something that lets me appreciate cinema for what it truly is. And to talk about that, we need to first talk about Sam Raimi. What our director did in 2002 was nothing short of extraordinary. He had the huge task to make the first ever blockbuster Spider-Man film, the huge task to do something on a grand scale. And to do that, Raimi took inspiration from another superhero movie, one that was made in 1978, and that film was Superman. Richard Donner's take on one of the most iconic characters in comic book history was an amazing success. It shared the box office records at the time and became a classic, and thus a blueprint was made that showed how to make a superhero origin story. It was inevitable that its influence would seep into everything afterwards, especially in what Raimi would do with Marvel's most amazing superhero. But this wasn't the only superhero that would influence our director, or at least I don't feel like it was. The creative aspects of 60s Batman really seemed to crawl its way into Raimi's vision, especially in regards to the moment when we witnessed Peter climbing a building for the first time. It instantly reminded me of when Batman and Robin did the exact same thing in the 60s version of the series and film, only done in a way more realistic and convincing manner. It's all of these elements that make these Spider-Man films timeless, whilst never forgetting what made Sam Raimi such a unique director. He started his journey as a filmmaker by doing many horror films with his friends and family, most notably his Evil Dead films, ones that were infused with incredible vision, with such a particular style, and that became crucial in his storytelling, to use the imagery as best as possible to fulfill the needs of the story, and that's exactly what he did in the Spider-Man films. The creative filmmaking that shines in every scene, the magnificent mix of practical and CGI effects, the unforgettable score by Danny Elfman that elevates the film as a true epic, the cinematography that uses lighting, shadows, and color to accentuate each character, each moment, whether it's one of the most iconic kisses in film history, or one of the greatest action set pieces of all time, or even a throwback to his earlier style as a filmmaker, making me wish so much that movies nowadays took their time to deliver something so profound, so creative, so grounded that made me feel alive, that made me feel like I was watching works of art, rather than content being made as quickly as possible. But while that is true, whilst all these films are epic stories to be seen on a big screen, what matters the most is how small they really are. how relatable they really are. How each scene isn't there to just give us information, but rather letting it breathe so we can actually feel what the characters are feeling. And that aspect is central to the core themes of what makes Spider-Man, Spider-Man, a metaphor for growing up. If we look into it deep enough, we end up realizing something so simple with these films. The first film is about puberty, its sequel is about adulthood, and its last entry is about forgiveness. It's about someone who deals with the hardships of life, enhanced by the dramatic nature of his character, the powers that he possesses, the responsibilities he faces, and the consequences that comes with each choice he makes, just like each and every one of us go through in our lives. How can you not relate with this? How can you not know what it is to have a crush on someone and not having the confidence to say what you feel, or suddenly have to deal with all of these emotions hidden inside you? How to cultivate them, learn from them, and use it in a way that is good for you and others, or maybe even have to juggle so many things to try and be the person you want to be, whilst also doing the things you want to do. How each choice massively affects you, again and again and again, and how each time it does, it breaks you, it consumes you, you can't seem to catch a break, and you feel all alone. But you continue to stand up and keep pushing forward. You keep on making the same choice because that's what you have to do. And maybe deep inside all the hurt, what you really want to do, even if it means pushing away so many people dear to you. How can you not love this? But the truth is, you do love this. You wouldn't be here if you didn't. It's influenced all of us and taught us so much. Taught me so much. These films were my blueprint in life. They were my Uncle Ben. They are my Uncle Ben. To have a father figure is a blessing that I can never truly understand. But what I did have was what existed around me. And so, the only way I could truly learn about the morality in life was through television, through anime, and of course, through cinema. Spider-Man was that for me. Uncle Ben was that for me. I didn't understand his words when I was younger, but I do now.
Remember, with great power comes great responsibility.
It felt like for a moment in my life, there was someone who was actually teaching me profound things that I could benefit from. It would have done me so much good if I had properly listened to it back in the day. But I didn't. I was a kid, and I didn't really have anybody to teach me these things. And so, I had to be my own father figure, for myself, for my family, for my friends, for my loved ones, holding their hands while they cried, while they were hurting, while they were scared, while they needed someone to listen to them. I chose to be that person. That was the weight I placed upon myself, the burden I decided to carry, all because I wanted to impact people positively, to make their lives better somehow. But it's not like I saw myself as a side character in some film. No, I saw myself as the protagonist, because that's what I wanted to be. As the person who could save the day, as the person who could be trusted, as a hero. But I was also incredibly flawed, and what I eventually had to learn during my adult years was the responsibility that was in front of me. I didn't know how to deal with it, and I chose to put it aside. I wanted to do something so badly, to pursue what I felt like was my own superpower. But by doing so, I had to sacrifice so much. That sacrifice led me many times to be alone, and ended up hurting me in ways I could have never envisioned. And so, I wasn't being seen the way I wanted to be. Because the truth is, even though I wanted to do good, I never wanted to be seen as a hero. I merely wanted to be seen as myself. That's what everybody wants, what everybody needs. And it's exactly that what Mary Jane realizes at the end of Spider-Man 1. Not as some superficial character, nor as someone who needed to be taken care of. She just needed to be seen, to be understood.
That I'm just me.
And at the end of Spider-Man 2, she arrives at the culmination of her character arc, the power to make a choice for herself. She didn't care about the consequences. She wanted to be with Spider-Man. She wanted to be with Peter Parker. And she was the one to make that choice of being with someone who saw her as who she was. And she was able to finally see him for who he was. A hero that needed to be saved.
Isn't it about time somebody saved your life?
It was at that moment that my eyes started to waver, started to become heavier, started to not fully control what I was feeling. I felt the weight of my entire life suddenly lift itself from underneath my own skin. That I could be vulnerable, that I could let my guard down and not be hurt, that there was someone out there that could let me be hurt. And that in itself is beautiful. Beautiful at the age of 32, I connected even more with these superhero films. That these spectacles weren't made to just sell toys, or to make money, or to satisfy the whims of its producers. No, it was to show us who we really are. That we too grow. That we too shoulder things we weren't ready for. That life is hard. That we're not always given what we want. That we make mistakes, a lot of mistakes. And because we have a conscience, we feel the weight of it, making us feel bad, making us regret the things we've done. But we learn from those mistakes. We learn to forgive ourselves, and in turn, we learn to forgive others too. Sam Raimi Spider-Man films aren't just superhero films. They are so much more than that. Whether it's a great origin story, a masterpiece of a sequel, or a messy last film, they all have one thing in common. All of them have so much heart. All of them teach us so many things. Not so much what it means to be a hero, but rather what it means to be human, and what each of us can do in our lifetime.
I believe there's a hero in all of us that keeps us honest, gives us strength, makes us noble, and finally allows us to die with pride, even though sometimes we have to be steady and give up the thing we want the most.
When I was a kid, I dreamt about becoming Spider-Man. But as an adult, I realized that I had always been Peter Parker. Thank you for watching my video. Sam Raimi Spider-Man had a massive influence in my upbringing, and I'm so glad to be able to finally talk about it. I want to thank all of my patrons for supporting me thus far. I can't thank you enough. I truly love making each video, and so for me to keep doing this, your support is crucial. And thus, if you want to see more content like this, I'll be forever grateful if you could support with any amount you can. It would also mean a lot to me if you could subscribe and hit that like button. And in the meantime, why not check out some of the other videos I've made so far. Thanks again, and I'll see you in the next video.